Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in the world on the 22nd of March of 2026. Today we have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the Middle East, where according to information we have, the United States of America is entering the second phase of the limited operation on the territory of the Middle East. And this phase, the United States of America, during the next phase, the United States of America will try to damage significantly or even to destroy the entire energy infrastructure of Iran if the Iranians don't accept the US ultimatum that was issued just several hours before. The President of the United States of America said that if Iran doesn't fully open without the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours from this exact point in time, the United States of America will hit and obliterate their power plants, starting with the biggest one first. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald Trump. So the United States of America will try to attack and to destroy energy infrastructure of Iran, but one thing is clear, that this is not an easy job, because the Iranian energy infrastructure is something that's decentralized. So it's impossible to hit one power station or one substation and to destroy the entire energy infrastructure of this state. Iran's power grid is decentralized within its largest power plant, supplying just 3% of total power. So according to the President of the United States of America, if the Iranians doesn't accept the demands of ultimatum, he will start attacking the biggest power plants. And according to this article, even if the United States of America attack the biggest power station, it will cut probably just up to 3% of total power. In contrast, for example, when talking about the energy infrastructure of Israel, we understand that the situation is much worse with the comparison of the Iranian energy infrastructure. So obviously the Iranians will strike back, and they will try to attack not just the Israeli power and energy infrastructure. This is not the main target. Obviously the Iranians will try to attack energy infrastructure of every single Persian Gulf state, the state of Saudi Arabia, of Qatar, of Bahrain, and of course of the United Arab Emirates. We see that this process will take time, obviously months, weeks, obviously months, maybe up to 2 months will need for the United States of America to destroy or to damage significantly the energy infrastructure of Iran. And as we can see, this is exactly the time that the United States of America needs to redeploy their forces in this region. I would like to remind you that currently there are up to 6,000 troops are heading towards the Arabian Sea with the purpose probably to take part in possible ground operation. At the same time, we received updates that yesterday Saudi Arabia allowed the United States of America to use their military airfield, which is located in the northwestern parts of Saudi Arabia. We're talking about this one. Furthermore, we remember that the United Kingdom allowed the United States of America to use Diego Garcia Air Base, Navy Air Base, to use their strategic bombers to attack the territory of Iran. And today we received the report that the United Kingdom submarine arrived in the area. The British nuclear submarine Anson has arrived in the Arabian Sea. It takes a position in the deep waters of its normal part, equipped with Tomahawk missiles and the Spearfish torpedoes. The submarine can launch strikes against Iran in the event of the escalation of the conflict. So we see that the build-up of the coalition continues. It will take time, and the next days, within the next 40 hours, the United States of America will begin bombing energy infrastructure. And so when I started making this video, it's already probably not 48 hours, but already 36 or something like this, so very soon. So it seems that somewhere on Tuesday, on the 24th of March of 2026, we'll see first strikes and first attacks on objects of energy infrastructure. But according to the latest updates, everything is not so simple, or at least everything won't be so simple as probably the President of the United States of America see or imagine. Because starting on yesterday or the day before yesterday, we began receiving updates on the matter that the Iranians managed to improve their air defense forces, and they managed to do this significantly. For example, today we received a report that the Iranians maybe, probably, maybe not, maybe maybe this is a fake, maybe this is a AI generated video, who knows, but some sources are saying that the Iranians managed to damage F-15s near the Hormuz island. So as of the end of the 22nd of March of 2026, we don't know for sure whether this information is correct or it's a fake. The pro-coalition sources or official sources haven't confirmed this accident. Another accident took place in the area of the city of Sfahan, the same story. Here we can see a video of F-16 falling on the surface. Once again, the official authorities haven't confirmed this accident as well. So we don't know whether it's true or not, but more and more signals, we are receiving more and more signals that it's becoming unsafe to fly over the state of Iran and the skies of Iran is becoming more and more dangerous for the aviation of coalition. And of course, if all these updates with the jets, fighter jets, are true, of course this means that this is not going to be an easy trip for the coalition to destroy or to damage the energy infrastructure of Iran, and there are very high chances that the coalition may suffer additional losses. At the same time, we continue receiving updates and signals that most likely Saudi Arabia is going to take part in this in the coalition, and most likely Saudi Arabia will use their navy forces, aviation forces, and troops. Because according to information we have, the Saudi Arabians noticed to the military attaché of embassy of Iran, his assistants and 3 members of the mission to leave the country within 24 hours. Members of the Iranian diplomatic mission are not welcome and must leave. Something like this always happens before the beginning of war or before the beginning of any conflict between different states. So most likely, if this situation happened on the territory of Saudi Arabia, this means that most likely Saudi Arabia is going to take part in the coalition and is going to take part in the operation against Iran. So anyway, let's wait and see what is going to be next. One thing is clear, that during the upcoming nights, the Iranians are going to continue attacking the Middle East states, but the most important strikes most likely will take place between the 23rd and the 24th of March of 2026. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in Ukraine, where the Russians continue, or where the Russians are intensifying their spring offensive operation. The sources are saying that the situation is very difficult, and this information was confirmed by many sources, including pro-Ukrainian sources. They're saying that the Russians have launched their major offensive operation with the purpose to establish complete control over the belt of fortress in Donetsk region. Russians have launched an offensive on the belt of the fortresses in Donetsk. Russian troops have intensified offensive action starting the spring-summer campaign against the main line of defense of the armed forces of Ukraine. The main combat actions are concentrated on the Limansky direction, where the Russians is trying to create conditions for an advance in Sloviansk. That was stated by the Institute of Study of War. So they are saying that this region, this territory, is the territory with the biggest number of clashes and activities from the Russian side. So we're talking about the territory along the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass canal, along the river of Seversky Donetsk, and along the river of Oskol. So the Russians are attacking in this region with the purpose to shorten the distance to the city of Sloviansk itself. The Ukrainians have already announced the evacuation of the city of Sloviansk, and probably we start receiving first videos and first updates that the Russians began bombing and attacking the city of Sloviansk with aviation. We haven't received almost anything like this during the previous phases of the conflict on the territory of Ukraine. We had reports that the Russians were bombing, but without video proofs, and now we start receiving video proofs, which means that the Russians most likely accepted the reality that the Ukrainians are not going to give up Donbass region. So that's why the Russians don't have any other option but to make Sloviansk, with the situation with Sloviansk as they made with Lysychansk, Severodonetsk, Bakhmut, Chasiv Yar, Konstantinovka, Pokrovsk, Mirnograd. So I'm simply saying the Russians will be forced to reduce to ruins the city of Sloviansk with the purpose to force the Ukrainians to fall back from this area. As for the previous 24 hours, additional changes on the ground in this area were recorded. The Russians improved their positions in the area of the settlement of Rai Alexandrovka and Lipovka. But the most important thing that several pro-Russian sources during the previous 24 hours stated that the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to improve their position significantly and to answer the settlement of Raya Alexandrovka and to dig in deeper. So as of now, it's very difficult to understand where exactly the Russians, which entrance point the Russians chose to answer the settlement of Raya Alexandrovka, either the eastern or the southern one. But this is not, it doesn't matter. Maybe it matters, but the most important thing is that the Russians have answered the settlement of Raya Alexandrovka and managed to dig in deeper, which means that a part of the settlement of Raya Alexandrovka is already under complete Russian control. So the Russians most likely answered the settlement of Raya Alexandrovka either from the south, probably from the central part of the settlement, or they will do this in the near future, or the Russians answered the settlement of Raya Alexandrovka from the area of the village of Kalinovka, which means that from the northeast. So both directions, maybe the Russians are using both directions for offensive operation, and it seems that the things began developing much faster than we used to see even 6 months ago, when the Russians were trying to break through Ukraine's defense on the line between the settlements of Sviatopokrovska, Riznikovka, Kriva Luka. So there were very heavy clashes in this area, and the Russians were moving very slowly. Sometimes it took Russians up to 3 weeks to improve their positions from one village to another. So the Russians spent months before taking under control small village like Riznikivka or the village like Fedorovka Druga or Nikiforovka. And now when spring started, the Russians began advancing much faster. And if indeed the Russians answer the settlement of Raya Alexandrovka, this is already a very bad signal for the Ukrainians. At the same time, the Ukrainians continue keeping positions in the area of the city of Liman. And now the main logistic road was discovered. It seems that the Ukrainians are using this dam for the logistic purposes, and during the previous 24 hours we received lots of videos of how Russians were attacking units and forces of the armed forces of Ukraine that were trying to cross this territory. So the Ukrainians are still sending more and more troops in the direction of the city of Liman with the purpose to stabilize the situation, but it seems that the end for this battle is inevitable. Most likely it will be finished very soon. Furthermore, during the previous days, during the previous 24 hours and during the previous probably 48 hours, we received lots of updates on the matter that the Russians began mechanized assault operations in the direction of the settlement of Studenak using hundreds of vehicles and hundreds of soldiers and dozens of vehicles. During the previous 24 hours or 48 hours, the Russians carried out a massive attack in this direction. The sources are saying that the Russians used up to 500 soldiers, up to 18 light vehicles like motorcycles and quadricycles, and up to 30 heavy vehicles, including infantry fighting carriers and tanks. The Russians were trying to break through the Ukrainian defenses and to get probably the river Voskol, but the Ukrainians are saying that they managed to repel this attack and to force the Russians to fall back. So as of now, we are waiting for additional updates. Maybe in coming days we will receive some videos that will confirm that the Russians, as a result of this offensive operation, managed to improve their positions. And before this offensive operation began, the Russians attacked the main logistic lines in this area with the purpose to reduce the Ukrainian logistic capabilities in this region. So it seems that the Russians are really tasked to take under complete control the most northern parts of the Donetsk region. Then some units of the Russian forces will continue advancing further in the northern direction towards the village of Barova. By the way, today we received reports that the Russians began advancing in this area from the north, from the area of Novoplatonovka, Boguslavka. So it seems that the Russians are tasked to take this territory and to take this pocket also during 2026 and to establish complete control over the river Voskol, over its eastern bank. So that is why this part of the front line is a very important front line for the Russians for the 2026, and obviously they will be tasked to take under complete control everything to the east of the river Voskol. As for the northern Kupiansk direction, during the previous 24 hours we haven't received almost anything, but several pro-Russian sources and pro-Ukrainian sources today confirmed that, and reported and confirmed as of now without videos, that the Russians lost completely their foothold on the Ukrainian side of the river Voskol. So the western Kupiansk has been lost for Russians. They were forced to fall back from this area completely, and we believe that in coming days we will receive updates, videos and so on, and then we will color this territory. So the battle for the western Kupiansk has finished. The Russians were trying to establish complete control over the city, but then the Ukrainians Ukrainians counterattacked and restored complete control, almost complete control over the territory. But during the battle for the Western Kupiansk, the Russians, as you can see, managed to improve their position significantly on the Eastern Kupiansk direction. Just for your understanding, let's take a look at the map on the 1st of October. So this is the situation by the 1st of October of 2026. As you can see, the map looked like completely differently. So once again, this is the 1st of October of 2025. As you can see, the pocket was almost under complete control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, or armed forces of Ukraine. And today we have this picture. So almost the entire pocket was captured while the Russians were fighting for the Western Kupiansk. Maybe that was the main idea. The Russians were trying to hold control over the western parts of Kupiansk, trying to cut the main supply and logistic lines that were moving in the eastern direction. While the Russians were fighting for the Western Kupiansk, the main Russian forces managed to establish almost complete control over the eastern bank of the river Oskol. There are just several micro districts and blocks and pockets in this area that are still probably under control of the armed forces of Ukraine, but obviously during the 2026, Ukrainians would be forced to fall back from this area. Maybe that was the point. The Russians maybe was planning to use the river Oskol as a natural barrier for defense purposes, and maybe this is going to be something like a future border or something like this. Now let's discuss the situation in the most northern direction. Today we received an update published by the Group of Forces North. Today they stated that the Russians, as a result of clashes, managed to improve their position significantly and to capture the settlement of Potapovka. And this is the way how the map has been adjusted since the 20th of March of 2026. So as you can see, the Russians are keeping advancing in the most northern parts of the Sumy region, and they will continue. But as of now, as you can see, the Russians are trying to stay along the border without moving further deep inside of the western direction. But it seems that due to the fact that the Russians have captured every single village along the border, now they will try to move further, and the next target for Russians could be the villages of Bachevsk, the village of Karinok, and of course the settlement of Ulanova. This is the second layer of settlements in the most northern parts of Sumy region that the Russians most likely are tasked to take under complete control. As for the Zaporozhye direction, during the previous video we have already discussed about this situation. The Russians continue intensifying their activities in the Orekhov direction. During the previous day we received lots of videos of how Russians were attacking positions of the armed forces of Ukraine in the city of Orekhov, which means that the Russians are very over-focused in this area. Maybe the Russians are planning, according to different sources, the Russians have already started offensive operation in this area, so everything is possible. So let's keep an eye on this area. Maybe in coming days we'll receive some updates. As for the Zaporozhye itself, during the previous 24 hours we have adjusted the map. This is the end of the 21st and this is the end of the 22nd of March. The Russians probably anymore don't have strong control over these territories anymore. We're not saying that the Russians don't control these territories at all. We believe that there is a very big gray zone or mixed positions of both Russians and Ukrainians. So it seems that there is something like a big mass in this area as well, and both the Russians and the Ukrainians are trying to improve their positions or to restore the lost positions, but at the same time the Ukrainians continue infiltration further in the southern direction, and it seems that Ukrainians are tasked to establish complete control and fire control over the road Gulyai-Polye, Uspenovka, the village Velika Novosovka. This is a key road that Ukrainians are trying to cut physically, and the Russians are trying to do everything they can with the purpose not to allow the Ukrainians to do this. As for the Dobropolye direction, the sources confirm that the Russians are very active in this area. During the previous 24 hours, additional changes were recorded. The Russians are about to begin the battle for the settlement of Sergeyevka. From many directions, the Russians are about to establish complete physical control over the settlement of Grishina. Today we received additional videos confirming the progress on the ground. We have a video where we can see a Russian soldier moving between the trees and in this part of the settlement, and the Russians are keeping advancing further. It seems that there is a stronghold of the armed forces of Ukraine in the most northwestern part, and Ukrainians probably still control this territory, but the Russians are about to probably encircle this territory and to force the Ukrainians to fall back. Another stronghold that is still under complete control of the armed forces of Ukraine is the Zaporozhskaya mine, which is located to the west of Rodinska, but today, according to different sources, the Russians managed to encircle these positions completely, which means that in coming days, either the Ukrainians would abandon their positions positions in this area, or they would be completely encircled by Russians. And the Russians are keeping advancing further in the direction of Dobropolye. As for the city of Konstantinovka, during the previous 24 hours, we received updates on the matter of the Ukrainian counter-offensive operation that took place during the previous days. The Ukrainians managed to improve their position significantly, at least according to pro-Ukrainian sources. Pro-Russian sources stated that these counter-attacks in the direction of the city of Chasiv Yar were repelled, but as of now we decided to add a gray zone because we have a mess in this area and we need additional clarification to understand who exactly controls the situation around the city of Chasiv Yar. And that's it for today. The Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.